Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 66 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts podcast network. I am your host, Rocky Petrella at Dynasty FF Addict, and with me is Andrew Hall, co-host Andrew Hall. No guest this week. We were supposed to have the three of us, but Scott was feeling a little under the weather, so it's just going to be me and Andrew with you guys this week. Talk about some stuff from week 4 and then just get into a lot of good Dynasty talk here. So, Andrew, we got the game going on tonight as usual. I think somebody just scored. Tyler Lockett, it looks like. Robert Woods is back tonight, 6 for 67 already. So, how you feeling? You watching this game?
I'm watching, but I think I'm on a delay because I don't have that. That is terrific. Right. I see a penalty on my screen here. So, no, that's it's I'm just happy again. I'm always happy when there's football on. I'm always glad to be on this and talk. And I know we had some time off there, which was nice. So it's good to be back in the host chair kind of and get ready to talk some football with you.
Yep, we had to miss a week. I think for possibly the first time since we started the pod. It just worked out. We have 3 hosts now. None of us could get on last week, but we're back, and we should be back every week going forward. So hopefully you stick with us. So as usual, we'll get right into the injury news for the past week 4. One of the big ones is David Montgomery had a knee sprain. Thankfully, it looked like it might have been an ACL. He looked in a lot of pain, but they're saying 4 to 5 weeks. So Damian Williams is next man up. Is Damian Williams someone you're interested in on a contending team, Andrew?
I mean, as a trade target, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, send an offer, see what you can get. I mean, I don't think I'd offer anything more than a late second at this point. If you're contending, hopefully it's late and yours. But I mean, I'm not out there actively trying to get him or anything. But I think the way this year has gone with all the injuries and stuff that we've seen and all the craziness at the running back position with you don't know what's going to happen, like Myles Gaskin last week just disappearing on us. I feel like any running back is a good running back these days. So yeah, I'll try to get Damian Harris a couple places, but I don't know. I'm not selling the farm.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. I actually the biggest takeaway for me is it might be an opportunity to buy Montgomery low, because I mean he's a real solid back. He was already kind of undervalued as it was, and he was looking pretty good this year. Everybody was horrible in that first Justin Fields game where Andy Dalton went down, or no, I think the one where he started against Cleveland where it was like 9 sacks and they couldn't do anything. But other than that game, he's been pretty good. So he's a guy I'd be looking to target actually more than Williams. I think you can get him if if you can afford to just keep him on your bench for a little while. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery is one of those guys that I think came into the season with a really, I don't know, a polarizing hype, right? A lot of people were like, oh my God, he's amazing. And he dominated down the stretch and won me my title. And then you had the other camp that was kind of like, I don't know. I feel like his schedule was weak and he didn't really earn it. I mean, he was kind of all over the place, but in the beginning of the season, he was doing well. So yeah, I think Montgomery's not a bad option, but you put it well. If I can buy him low, I'm in, but I'm definitely not sending the farm for him either, just because he's hurt now and these kind of things can linger. I don't want to deal with it for the long term. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. Another major injury, not in terms of length, but in terms of the level of the player, was Joe Mixon coming out late in that Thursday game.
We've heard this before, haven't we? Oh exactly. My goodness! Oh, jeez.
And it's funny you say that, because it's almost like after this, I kind of feel like I'm almost out on Mixon. He had that big game 1, then he's been kind of that underachieving Joe Mixon for the last 3 games afterwards. I'd wait. I mean, you gotta wait till he comes back, but I'd probably be looking to sell him if you can. I keep thinking the talent is there, but it never manifests except for these occasional bursts. And sometimes they last for a month, but I can't do it anymore. He's 20. What is he? I think he's 25 now.
You're off that train.
Yeah, I was high on Mixon coming into the season too. The offense, assuming Burrow was healthy, they had the 3 receivers. I figured he was gonna have the lion's share of the receiving work, but they are actually putting P. Ryan in sometimes the way they did Gio. I think in the first game he was getting a lot of the passing work, but a lot of the snaps even on like 3rd downs and things like that. But since then it's kind of tailed off some, and Samaje's been coming in. So Are you with me? Are you with me, Andrew? You out on Mixon?
I feel like your deep sigh was exactly what we needed. Just man, like what the
Yeah,
heck do we do with this guy? You know what I mean? He's got the talent, he's got the opportunity, but he can't stay healthy. I mean, like what the heck? The only ability that matters is availability, right? Like you got to be on the field to score points, man. It doesn't matter how good you are if you're on the couch. I do have Mixon on one or two teams, I want to say, and I'm not necessarily selling him. You said it well too. You can't sell him now. You can't trade him away now. You got to wait till he does something. I don't think this is going to be like last year where he missed a game and then missed a game and then missed a game and then you know what I mean. Like I don't think that it's going to be like that. I think this is a mild ankle sprain from what we're hearing. He definitely missed practice. He definitely could miss this game. I don't think that that'd be too shocking. I think even they're coming out now. I think I just heard this before we came on that he is basically out this week. That the offensive coordinator said that Mixon's not going to play. They're going to split carries between P. Ryan and Evans, which I think is a smart move. Give him a week off. But I mean, if it gets to be like 3 weeks of this, then yeah, I'm probably done. Right? It's like he's got a short leash for me, and I'm a Bengals fan, so I want him to do well. You know what I mean? Like I just, man, it hurts not to see him perform.
Yeah, and then remember last year too. I mean, it was supposed to be a couple weeks or whatever it was, and he's coming back. He's coming back. We're not putting him on IR. He's coming back. And
well, but see, the main difference there was last year the team was not doing anything. They had no reason to like rush him back. It was kind of like, let's wait and see how the team does. If the team does well, maybe we hurry him back. The team's 3-1 right now. We're atop the division, the only team in the AFC North with a divisional win against Pittsburgh. So I mean, like we are in theory the best team in the AFC North with maybe some quote fingers around that. Point being, though, that's a whole reason to rest Mixon for one game. Let's just take a breather here. Let's let him get his ankle healed up and come back when we need him. So I think it's a slightly different context. But yeah, if it goes on a couple weeks again, I'm cutting the cord. I'm out. I'm with you.
Yeah. Like I said, like you said, I just can't do it anymore. So
an abusive relationship, right? It's like at some point you're like, I'm out, man. I can't take it.
I kind of had that with the OBJ. Even going into last year, OBJ, I was mostly out, and then he got hurt, and I was just like, yeah, I'm done. And I know some people were like, oh, he's going so late. He's, this is a value. Get OBJ. I was like, no.
Well, I did in a couple places because the price was right. It's always about the price, right? I think I got him for a third in one league because somebody was just like, they're like, I'm done. I'll take anything for him, and I just sent him a trade in like within minutes of him saying that. And it was just a third for it, just to see what he would say. And literally 5 minutes later, accepted. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll take that. I mean, I'll definitely take OBJ over a third. Like, what the hell's a third anyway? So that was one of those, just the guy was done. He was fed up. And I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, I think I might have even bought him for a third, even though I was out. But
I'd buy Mixon for a third, right? Anybody's worth a third. It's the player. We talked about this before. Like, the players are almost always worth more during season than the picks. Might as well. Let's see what happens.
Right. And this one's a little more minor. Logan Thomas, they put him on IR, hamstring injury, out 4 weeks. I don't know. This has a lot of fantasy impact. I mean, some people were starting Logan Thomas, but if you were depending on Logan Thomas, you're in trouble. Maybe it gives a little more volume to the other guys. McLaren. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Samuel coming back now, especially too. He got, I think, 4 for 19 last week. Yep. And any thoughts on Logan Thomas injury? You just move on to the next one.
Well, I mean, Logan Thomas is one of that, second tier of tight ends. There's 20 tight ends deep. You know what I mean? Like, nobody knows what to do with. So there were definitely people that had him and that rostered him and that were trying to find a way to get him in the lineup. And now that that's gone, they might have to go down to like an Evan Ingram or something, right? Like they had, dig deeper in the tight end well, which could get annoying, or like a Tyler Higbee who's going tonight. I think the weird thing about that, the thing that made me to kind of take notice, or at least made my eyebrows go up, was the team signed Jay Sternberger.
I was just going to mention
like, that's an interesting angle there. Like, if they're signing someone that quickly, that makes me worry that it's a hamstring injury can linger and all of these, but like, it makes me worry that maybe they didn't feel like they had the depth. I don't even remember who the guy was behind him, but it must not matter. And the fact that they're bringing in a guy who kind of got shoved out of Green Bay.
Seals Jones, by the way.
Is Ricky okay? Well, either way, so like I'm not worried about Seals Jones too much, but I just think that I picked up Jason a couple leagues because of deep leagues where I'm not contending, just to be like, who knows? You never know. So that's where I think it's more interesting, just to see who fills that void. Could be Samuel, could be one of these other guys, might be nobody, right? Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the only takeaway to take from this. If it's even in deep dynasty leagues, Jay Sternberger is going to be on waivers in most leagues if he wasn't picked up by Andrew or me. So
That's right.
uh, but yeah, so that he might be an interesting flyer to just pick up and see what happens for the next month. He got out of favor in Green Bay once Tunyon emerged. So, but he's a guy a lot of people had decently high hopes for when he was drafted. So
Yeah,
could be interesting, but yeah, I don't expect much from Sternberger or Seals Jones. So
no waiver wire pickups at this time of year in Dynasty. You're just hoping for some sort of value bump to trade for a third. You know what I mean? Like somebody out there is hoping for something. That's why I always tell people every time I talk to people on Twitter and they DM me or whatever, I'm always like, what's on your waivers? Like, go churn that bottom of your roster. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes, let's say you do it 20 times in a season. You get 20 different guys on your bench and they never do anything, but that 21st one does, and you feel like a winner. That's what it's all about. Just keep churning it, right? Go get Le'Veon Bell. Go get Gallman. Who knows? There's a bunch of random guys you could have at the bottom of your roster. Might have value. You never know.
yeah, that really is mainly the point of waivers in Dynasty. You're rarely, it's like once a year, maybe you get a guy who you can regularly or even plug in for bye weeks, even then feel confident about. But
right.
but yeah, like it's funny you mentioned like Alex Collins is a guy I picked up a bunch before that. Like 2 weeks ago, I was picking up Alex Collins 3 weeks ago because he was clearly the handcuff there.
Yep.
I gotta start if he hopefully he has a good game. I'll be happy to take a third even for him if he has a decent game this week. So I'm not sure where he's at now, but
He got 3.3, I think, in standard. I don't think he's got any catches, but like 33 yards, I'll take that. That's not bad and a half. You know what I mean? That's better than some players get for a whole game. Gaskin, not talking about you, but like, yeah, he's still got some value. He's doing all right. He's definitely getting the bulk of the carries.
yeah, and he looked nice last week with the I guess Carson was already banged up last week because Collins got a pretty decent amount of run in week 4 as well. So if you can flip him for a third, that's you're
making
basically fab for a third. I'll take it every day. So
yep, and I know that's what Scott would say too, right? The portfolio dynasty player that Scott is, anything you can do to add value. That's Scott is probably screaming in his little bit of voice that he has left in his sickness. He's probably screaming, "That's exactly right, guys." I love it.
I hope so. Okay, another big one, DJ Chark.
Yeah, this one hurts.
Also in that Thursday night game, fractured ankle. Looks like he's out for the season. They put him on IR.
You hate to see that. I mean, he's a young player. He's got a lot of potential, and they're trying to build some rapport with Trevor Lawrence on a team that really needs his help. And man, freak injuries. It's a part of the game. You hate to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's rough. Especially he's done for the year. And it's been kind of interesting to see how things would shake out there. And now it's going to be, I guess, a little narrowed now. And it's basically Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault. I'm not even sure who the third guy would be at this point. To me, the play is to get Marv. Nobody cares about Marv. So
he's going to be cheaper. I agree with you on that. Visca's stock price just went up. I think this actually, depending on if you're contending or not, if you're not contending, if you're in the middle or you're rebuilding, I would almost say sell Visca, right? Like you might be able to get a first for him or something, or like a first for Visca and a third, or one of those things, right? You can maybe get a first out of this if you play it right and target the right team. I don't think that's going to work in every league, but there are definitely wide receiver needy teams out there, especially with news like Ridley not going to London today, right? Like there's a bunch of teams out there that are trying to scrape together whatever they can off the waivers and put their bench in a way that makes it so they can get points this week. Now might be the time to strike and sell Visca. On the other hand, I would love to target Chark to get him on my team if I'm not contending, right? A fractured ankle is not good. And this is definitely an injury that it scares you a little, but on the spectrum of injuries, it's not that bad. It's not an ACL. It's not an Achilles. It's not a brain or neck injury or anything like that, right? Dak just came back from this. I think DJ Chark will come back. Might be a little slow to enter the season, right? He's going to be one of those guys that we put in the ranks down low at like wide receiver 30. And then when he starts out slow, he goes down and everyone's like, why are we double counting it? It's what we thought. So I think Chark is someone trying to kind of target if you can get the right price, but I like to wait a week or two after the injury before I target these guys, just because sometimes it's too fresh. If you give them a couple weeks, they start to forget about it. So that's where I'm going. I don't have him on a single roster, and I'm betting in a couple weeks I get a couple shares.
Yeah, I don't think I have any Chark either. I agree with you about Laviska. I have him. I only have 1 or 2 shares of him as well, but I have him on one league where I'm sort of coming out the other end of a rebuild, and I'm pretty heavy on receivers because rebuilding. I tried to pick up a bunch of them, and I need some running backs. So I think I might try and see if I can get a decent running back for him. I
There you
think
go.
that's and it really helps. I think too that he had a really nice game. I think he had like 99 yards or something. I forget how many catches in that Thursday night game after he left. But I still think, like I said, I think Marv is an interesting trade target because I think he's kind of been the wide receiver one even when all 3 of them were there. So
You're ruining it. Don't tell people. You're exactly right. Marvin Jones is the kind of guy that I love in Dynasty because he's going dirt cheap and his production value is still really high. His trade
yes,
value might be 0, but his production value is 20. You know what I mean? Like out of 100, it's something, right? And in this kind of season where we're already seeing injuries stack up and we're having issues with bye weeks that aren't even here yet. I mean, yeah, Marvin's going to be the guy that I would love to have on and add to my teams if I'm contending. That's someone I'm targeting for sure.
yeah, and even if I would give up if you're contending, I'd be perfectly fine giving up a second. It's probably going to be a late second, mid to late second if you're a contending team.
See, you might be
And
able to pull something off like a second for Marvin Jones and Tyson Williams. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like try to get one of those other flyers back that doesn't have a lot of long-term value. And there's a bunch of people after that healthy scratch that are just done with Tyson Williams, maybe rightfully so. But like adding another player like that to your bench and you can drop Jerick McKinnon or someone, you know what I mean? Like someone else who's at the bottom of your bench. Why not? Right? Do it like a second for 2 players that mean nothing. That could easily work.
right. Okay, we'll get to the last guy we're going to talk about injury wise, which is Jimmy Garoppolo, calf injury. Jimmy seemed to be indicating in his post game press conference it was going to be a few weeks. But there's stuff coming out, and it might be gamesmanship from Shanahan or whatever, but stuff that he's still in play for this week. I believe he didn't practice today though, so it looks pretty likely he's at least out this week, if not more. And I know the Dynasty world is just waiting with bated breath to see a full start from Trey Lance, especially after last week. He put up depending on your scoring, 20 plus points. In a little over a half. So, although I will say, I think both of us have been a little vocal in our not hate, but skepticism of Trey
Yes.
Lance. And you take away a play where Debo was literally no one was within
20 yards
25
open.
yards. Yeah.
Yeah. And he underthrew the hell out of it. And
Yes.
Debo was so open he could come back and get it. He could almost stop, have a picnic, and then catch the ball. It was ridiculous.
If you take out that play, I believe Lance was 8 for 17. I don't know the yardage, but he was 8 for 17 for not a ton of passing yards. He did have 41 on the ground, which is the reason everybody loves him. But I'm still skeptical. I mean, and to be fair to Lance, I mean, he came in the middle of the game. He didn't get the first team reps, so he could certainly look better passing the ball next week. But what do you think with Lance and do you think Jimmy is donezo, or do you think Shanahan might actually go back to him if he's ready in a week or two?
Well, a couple little things. I do think of all the coaches, Shanahan's the one to do gamesmanship like this, right? Like he's the one to pull this and kind of, I don't know, pull the rug out from under us and say, nope, it is Jimmy at the last minute. But I'm excited because I don't have Lance in any dynasty leagues. He went way ahead of everywhere that I was willing to take him. And again, referencing back to Nick Whalen in that conversation that we had, he really kind of opened my eyes a little. I was like, yeah, maybe I will pass on him and take other guys there and things like that. But all that aside, I just love the narrative of it, right? Like this is the guy the Niners traded up for. This is their future quarterback. This is their franchise. I'm excited to see if it pans out. I'm not going to say I'm excited to be right if he's terrible, right? Like I'm not doing that, but it's just like, I'm curious to see how it goes, right? Like I just want to see it like everyone else. I just want to see if this guy that is third overall pick, some fourth overall pick or third, I think it was, right? Yeah. So like third overall pick goes to the Niners. They trade up all this stuff. Let's see if he's got it, right? I kind of like the narrative of all that. And I don't think Jimmy G is done. I do think that this is similar to the Justin Fields experience that we just saw. I think it's a way to get Lance in the game. It's a way to get him some reps, a way to see what they have in store, but keep Jimmy on the back burner. I don't know, just in case, right? Just let's see what happens and things like that. So yeah, the only place I have Lance is in a home keeper league, and I'm starting him over Tannehill because why not? Tannehill's been kind of a dud this year. I don't know if AJ Brown's going to play. It looks like he is. He's trending that direction. But again, like that offense is not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, maybe I need a little kick of something different. And let me put in Lance and I don't know, see what happens.
Yeah, I only have one share of Lance, and that's in a rebuilding auction league where I won him in an auction. I picked up a ton of rookies in that. I also have Mac Jones, a bunch of the rookie wide receivers, and so I'm interested to see how it goes. And yeah, I'm not. I mean, the way we've talked about it is it's not that we think Lance is necessarily bad. It's just that he's way overvalued. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty with him. And last week to me did not, despite everybody getting all hyped up about the 20 whatever points and a half.
It didn't look that great.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch every single snap that he played, I guess. I mean, I watched a lot of the highlights and stuff, but I wasn't impressed. But again, coming in off the bench, not really ready, rusty, that happens. I'm not gonna say his whole career is terrible because of half of a game of football. But it didn't wow me like I was hoping it would.
Right. That's what I was saying. Last week did nothing really to dispel our skepticism. So it's just the uncertain. Like we've said on this pod before. It's mainly to me that people just look at that ceiling, and the ceiling is tremendous. I mean, he could be. I mean, if he can pass the ball better than we both think, I mean, he could be QB1. With he's probably going to be like second to Lamar in terms of being able to rush the ball as a quarterback. But I just, again, I have my doubts about how well he's going to be able to pass it. We only saw 1 year, at a lower end school, at a, not a top, Division I school. So those guys just scare the hell out of me in general. So I hope for my one share's sake that he does okay, but I'm interested to see it. And I agree with you too about Jimmy that I wouldn't be surprised if Shanahan goes back to him. I kind of feel like they don't really want to start Lance yet at this point. That
it's too early. Yeah, I think their plan was to wait a couple weeks. They got a bye, I think, in week 6 or 7. I forget. Like they had a bye coming up, and I think that's when they were probably planning on changing the guard. And Jimmy's calf made it happen early. So we'll see. I mean, again, it could be a disastrous debut, like we saw with Fields, where his first start did not go well. But it could be something great. It could be like a Burrow kind of thing or a Tua, like one of those guys that elevates after his first start. I'm excited to see it, whatever it is.
Yeah, me too. So I guess we'll move on to the some of the stuff we want to talk about after week 4 here. We got a few different storylines, that we're looking at. And the one everyone's talking about this week, I feel like is Cordero Patterson after that huge game.
Everybody's talking about this guy. Yeah,
you got to talk about Cordero. It's kind of an amazing story, really. He's 30-year-old quote unquote running back,
special teams player, right? He's just a jack of all trades. Yeah.
Speaking of which, before we get into Cordero, and I didn't put this on the sheet, so I'm putting you on the spot here, Andrew. But we used to occasionally on Junkies do commish topics, and that's been a little bit of a point of contention on Twitter and stuff too. Is that especially MFL has him as a wide receiver? What are your thoughts on changing that? You can change it as a commission, at least in MFL. Which I found out about, I think after week 1 or week 2, and I did change him to a running back in all my leagues because he's listed as the team as a running back. He's lining up on most plays as a running back. What are your thoughts on should he be left as a wide receiver because that's what MFL has him as, sort of from a commish aspect, or would you be changing it if you were commissioning a league?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a cop-out, but I got to be like, it depends, right? If he's been on a team all year, he hasn't changed hands, there's been no trades, he wasn't on waivers, there was no fab, if he's literally just been on someone's team since August, I don't care what you do. Call him a tight end at this point. I really don't mind because the transactions, there's nothing there. If you want to make him have dual eligibility or just a running back, I mean, that's up to you, whatever you think your league is best to do. And I think every commissioner should make that decision for their league. However, if he was picked up off of waivers at some point since the start of the season or had been involved in a trade, I don't think you can change him because the trade and the value and the fab, whatever you spent, all that stuff was all done with whatever he was at the time. I was actually listening to the CBS Fantasy Football Today podcast, and they were kind of talking about that. And I don't like making any changes to any leagues that I run during the season, right? Once that ball kicks off week 1, I'm done. I'm off. I'm managing different things, but I'm not changing settings. I'm not changing rules. I'm not talking about player changing eligibility. Like, nope, that season has started. We'll talk about it off season, right? However, like I said, the caveat is if he hasn't changed anything, if he hasn't moved hands, and there are definitely dynasty leagues where he's been on the same roster for the whole time. And then I think that's probably not a bad deal because it doesn't affect anybody except for that one team and they get lucky. That's fine. That happens. So, I mean, I haven't had it come up at all. He was on waivers in the 2 leagues that I'm commissioning, and it was like, meh, not a big deal. The platforms, I know Sleeper and ESPN, I think both have him listed with dual eligibility from the start, as far as I recall. So I don't think there were any issues there. MFL,
Sleeper, I think, actually has him as a running back.
True, but I think you can still put him in a wide receiver slot. I think he's technically both. I'm actually looking at him right now. It does say running back for his position, but even then, I've seen him in wide receiver slots. Maybe it's if you don't move him. Either way, point I'm getting at in all of this is it's the MFL has been kind of the only bugaboo that hasn't moved, and I kind of like their stance of, hey, he was there at the beginning. It's up to you, make a decision. But I don't think there's one thing that every league should do. That's not fair. There are so many different ways that leagues get run. There are so many different commish styles and groups of friends. It just makes sense to play it league by league kind of.
Yeah, and I agree with you mostly on not changing things in season. I actually did, like I said, I commish, I think, 6 leagues. And to me, it was just, and the only reason I did it in season is because I wasn't aware of the fact that on MFL you could actually change a player's position before. But I think it was between week 1 and 2 is when I did it in all my leagues. That's the only reason I didn't do it, because I thought it was ridiculous. The guy's a running back. If you have a problem with them being listed as the actual position, then that's
what are you doing?
To me.
Yeah. I'm just saying, to make it fair, I don't think anybody's going to complain. The only people that I could see complaining, and that's kind of what I'm thinking in my head of all of this, is if he was listed as a receiver and I was looking at the fab going, I don't need another receiver, but if he was a running back, I might bid more, right? That changes the calculus for some people, and that's where I could see people getting upset. If you change it after the fact, that's not really fair. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Look at you there, because you just led into what the next question I was going to ask, which is where do you think he has more value? Would you rather have him as a running back or a wide receiver? And it sounds like running back.
Running back for sure. There are so few running backs these days, and in some leagues you only have to start 1; it doesn't matter. In some you have to start 3, and it matters a whole hell of a lot. And I think again, that's part of why I think it matters league to league. I know that there are some that I'm in where it's a 12 team, but you start 3 running backs, and those running backs are vital. I'm starting Mark Ingram this week. You know what I mean? Like, that is not ideal. But when you start 36 of them and you have backups and injuries, you get down into running back 40 before you know it, right? So like in that kind of league, his value is insane. And taking away running back eligibility and making him just a receiver is not fair to the position. But also that's what his value was when he was taken or something, right? But right. Yeah, I mean, there are so many wide receivers, and even in PPR leagues, he's getting so many passes and catching all this stuff, and he's got so much value as a running back. It's almost like a cheat code in a way. And we've seen a couple of those in fantasy come by here and there. And I mean, again, it happens with tight end and wide receivers sometimes, and tight ends are even harder to do. You know what I mean? There's so many fewer tight ends to start. So it's the same kind of thing. Receiver is the one position that nobody cares about. So when you add something else, then it becomes interesting. It's kind of, I don't know, about that easy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. He's definitely, because of there's more scarcity at running back, and even his production. I believe in generic PPR leagues, he's RB2 and wide receiver 5. So if you even just looking at that, he's a little higher in the running back ranks, and the fact that there's so many wide receivers anyway. So yeah, to me, it's easily I'd rather have him as a running back.
Well, the bigger question is, does he maintain this? Does he sustain this kind of production? I mean, honestly, it's been 4 weeks, right? This is not just 1 week fluke. This is not a 2-week thing. It's been 4 weeks, and he's a top 5 player at whatever position you want to call him. And that's not, you can't ignore that. You know what I mean? Like, that's not nothing. There is something to that. And so part of me is like, well, is he going to keep doing this? Is he someone we should be targeting? Is he somebody that contenders should be holding on to instead of trading away? Right? Like, when do you get out of this? When do you say, hey, enough, I'm off the ride? Because if you get off early, you could hate yourself for it, right? I mean, again, his value coming into the season was 0. He was on waivers in some leagues, right? And I know with the whole, the Atlanta, are they going to sign someone or not? They cut JV and Hawkins, who was that rookie that they kind of undrafted guy. And there was all that, who knows, is it going to be Gallman? Is it going to be, they're going to bring somebody in? All these question marks, right? And then all of a sudden Patterson breaks out in week 1 and he just keeps doing it. I mean, man, I don't know what to do with him. I'm not targeting him in trades because I feel like his trade value is way different than his production value, or at least what his predictable production value is. And I really try hard not to overpay for running backs until I know I'm contending, or until I'm that one running back away where I've literally got nobody on the bench, right? And at this time of year, I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, this is why I brought you on as co-host, Andrew. Man, you're again. That was the next question I was going to lead into, and you just picked it right up.
So I learned from Joe PCP. You got to keep segue.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. What do you do with him? It's like, if you're contending, do you try and cash out? Because clearly a 30-year-old running back, who's got crazy touchdown efficiency through 4 games is not going to keep this up. And he's not, I mean, I do think he will be a solid piece for the rest of the year, but he's not going to be RB2 or wide receiver 5. I don't believe, but and his usage is not indicative of someone that, and maybe, because of what he's done, they start using him more. But I believe his snap share percentage in almost every game is like under 40%.
It's 42 in week 3. Yeah, he's not getting a lot of snaps. And even when he does, he's 7 for 11, 7 for 20, 6 for 34 is pretty good. But I mean, like, he's not dominating on the ground. It's not like he's Derrick Henry breaking tackles and running long things. He's getting open in the passing game, because I honestly think that defenses haven't figured out what to do with him. They don't know how to cover him. A linebacker cannot cover this guy. So you end up having to drop a safety. Well, now you're leaving yourself open on the back end. It's something like Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts, which we saw, right? And now with Ridley being out, I don't know if that helps or hurts Patterson. There's always that talk of, like you said it before, like narrowing the field, right? Well, now there's one less target to compete with. Yeah, but that also means that cornerback can sneak down. They can bring a nickel package more often. They can put a corner on Cordero, and maybe that limits his upside because they don't have that threat. Instead of Calvin Ridley, you got Frank Darby or something starting out there. I'm not scared of that, right? That's a whole different game. So I do think that this week is a telling week. It's in London. There's a whole bunch of craziness. I'm not sure I'd be starting Cordero Patterson as like a top 5 running back, even though that's what he is. I definitely want him in my lineup because I think he's too hot to get rid of, so to speak.
Yeah,
but after this week, there's a bye, and after a week there's a bye, and then maybe they reload and retool and do something different. I don't know. I might be, if he does well this week, I'm probably selling. Maybe that's the way to put it. I don't have him on any roster, so I don't have to make the decision. But I'm not buying either because it's just too risky.
I actually have him on. Well, when I say quite a few, I'm talking like 5 or 6. I did pick him up in various places early on in this little spurt of production here. So, and that's the kind of the conundrum I'm dealing with is that, I'm a contending team in most of those leagues where I have them. I do think, though, the play, and I think it's probably, especially with now Ridley out, it's probably best to wait after this week and see if he does this again, or at least does something, good, which I think he will. I mean, it's basically in the receiving game. What's it going to be? It's going to be Pitts and him probably. So, I think after this week is a great time to try and move on. And I think I need to do that. I don't think you're getting, RB1 prices for him or even wide receiver 1 prices for him. But I don't expect that. If you can cash out for a second, that's working, working the dynasty game well. What do you think?
I'd love that. I would love to I would gladly take a second for Patterson. Now, I mean, again, it's a home keeper league. It's not dynasty, but I have a guy in my league who has both Davis and Patterson, and he was trying to trade me Patterson. I was like, what do you want for Patterson? And he goes, I want a stud receiver. And I was like, all right, what about Lockett? Right. He's wide receiver 9 on the year. I know he's hot and cold. He's doing all right tonight. Got 50 yards or something already. And he's like, no, I need somebody better than Lockett. I mean, this guy's a top 5 running back. And I'm like, wait, hold on. That's the pass, brother. Like that. We don't know where that's going. And Lockett is wide receiver 9. That's about as good as you're going to see. Like, what the heck? And I was like, what about Mike Williams? He's a top 5 receiver, right? Top 5 so far, Mike Williams. He goes, no, I need somebody better than that. I'm like, wait a minute. He goes, no, those numbers aren't sustainable. And I was just like, how is Patterson sustainable? We don't know that. Like, it's what the classic, he's valuing his guys more. So No trade was made, which is fine. But again, it just comes back to that old school adage of like, well, do you trust the past or do you try to predict the future? If we just look at the past, fantasy football is real easy, but it's inaccurate. You have to try to extrapolate out what are they going to do next. Defenses are going to figure him out. He's not going to get 3 receiving touchdowns every week. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Right. So like part of me says this is your window to sell for a second. If you can get a second for him, please smash that accept button. That is totally worth it. But I don't think you're getting much more than that. Even if he does this all year, I don't see anyone giving a first. I just don't see it. So why not get out now and get out from the ride?
Yeah, you're never getting a first for a 30-year-old player who's never done anything in his career up until this point, and no one expects to have value beyond 2021. Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Even then, his only value is to a contender who might be, hard up against it and like having a bunch of injuries. I still don't see a contender. If I'm a contender, I'm still not selling a first for Patterson.
No,
you know what I mean? Like that's even a late first is too valuable. You can get somebody much better. I'd much rather trade a late first for Joe Mixon. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like someone who's down and out, someone who's like not doing great. David Montgomery, do a first and some other player for David Montgomery. I mean, like, those are much more stable assets. I'd much rather do that.
I think and I don't think this is going to happen, but I think the only chance you would have to ever sell him for a first if let's say 13 games into the season, he's still an RB1 or wide receiver on whatever his positional designation is in your league, then maybe somebody who's going into the playoffs says, okay, this guy has done it for 12, 13 games now. I'm willing to give up what I expect to be a late first. But again, I don't see that happening. I like I said, I think he's going to be a usable flex piece going forward for the rest of the year.
Sure.
I'm not a big believer in Mike Davis. So I don't think that's going to hurt him. And I think they're going to keep finding ways to use him given this start. So I think he's going to be a solid piece, but I don't think he's going to be that RB1 wide receiver 1 in 8 weeks from now. So it's highly unlikely. Like you said, I'd wait till after this week and hope that he does it one more time. So maybe it drives up the price a little bit more and you can get some kind of good player for him or something. But yeah, like I said, I think I need to be looking to sell my shares pretty much everywhere I have him. He's not someone I was really thinking I was going to be starting, and I think I'm starting in almost every league I have him this week. So
might as well ride the lightning.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll move on to the next topic we wanted to talk about, which I wanted to get into the rookie quarterbacks. We haven't really talked about, we didn't have a show last week, and we haven't really talked about them much in the first 2 episodes in season. But this was the first week where all of them saw significant action thanks to Trey Lance getting in there. And I just wanted to get, do a little discussion, get your thoughts, get my thoughts on what you think of these rookie quarterbacks so far. So you want to pick one or two? You want to roll through all 5? Andrew, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I do think Trevor Lawrence is still the best of the bunch. I don't think that's changed. I don't think anyone would argue too much on that. I do think Zach Wilson has performed admirably given his talent around him and the way that team is built. I'm not a huge fan of what he's done, but I think he's doing the best with what he has. I think Mac Jones is quietly surprising me. I think he's actually doing well for where people drafted him, especially in Dynasty. I mean, he was a late first or even early second in some leagues, and I think he's paying off pretty nicely. He's not out there balling out doing anything crazy, but he's not turning the ball over tons and losing his job either. So that's fine.
And and with Mac, I just wanted to say, and this last game, they finally gave him a little more free reign because they were scared. Everyone's scared to run against the Bucs. And he showed he could do a little something.
He wasn't bad. Yeah. And I mean, just the last 2 with Fields and Lance, I mean, both of them having really rocky up and down kind of starts. I mean, again, we're saying Lance had a rocky start because that one pass was terrible, but at the same time, I mean, that's something you got to look out for. But at the same time, I mean, all of these guys are starting. I think honestly, I'm shocked that we've had all 4 of them in a game by week 4. I thought that we were going to see more of them. I admit, not Mac Jones. Obviously, I thought Cam was going to start, and that didn't happen. And then obviously now Wilson and Lawrence, those 2 are going to start day 1. But I definitely thought that we would see Lance and Fields probably week 6 to 8, somewhere in that range. So seeing them early was kind of interesting and injury laden, I guess. But I mean, I think it's hard to judge anybody, any rookie on 1 or 2 games. So I'm willing to give Lawrence and Wilson kind of a little more of a pass. I've seen them. I know what's up. But the newer guys and Jones obviously in that too, but the newer guys with Lance and Fields, I'm willing to give it a couple more weeks. But man, I don't know what to do. Those two offenses, those two coaching staffs are both just, I don't know, little wonky, if you know what I mean. Like Lance, especially, he could come in the game and dominate on the ground and not have to throw the ball at all. I'd be fine with that. Fields should do the same thing, but Matt Nagy's an idiot, doesn't know what he's doing. So yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and I've made my feelings on Zach Wilson pretty clear, and I will say I did think it was a good positive step for him that he played a pretty mediocre to bad Titans defense this week, and he looked decent. I mean, he did still throw a pick, but he won them the game, got him to overtime, and he didn't look awful, but he did those previous couple games, really all three games. In the first three games, he basically played one good quarter in week one, and the rest of it was pretty putrid. So I still haven't really turned around my opinion on him too much. It's nice that he was able to do that against the Titans, but I still think of the five, he's the most likely one to be a bust. And like you said, like we mentioned, I've been impressed with Mac. He hasn't lit up the fantasy world, but he's looking solid out there. They're asking him mostly to game manage until this game against the Buccaneers, and he's done it well. And I think he's going to progress from here, and I don't think he's ever going to be somebody that people are clamoring for, but my comparison
People said that about Brady in his career, like early on. You know what I mean? Like no one's going to want this kid.
Brady was a game manager in his first year. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying. He could be the next Tom Brady. I don't want to say that. That's not fair on the kid. But at the same time, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. Like he's not doing anything that makes me feel like he's terrible. Right? He's managing the game. He's getting what he needs done. I think this is the perfect team for someone like that, where he doesn't need to be flashy. He doesn't need to win on the ground. The team's not asking him to do more than he can handle. I mean, it could be in 5 years, we could be look back on this and go, Mac was the best quarterback of the bunch. Who knew? It's possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know if it's likely, but I'm still, there's not been much. Fields is the guy I really liked. Everybody obviously, I had Lawrence at 1, just like everybody else, but Fields was right up there for me.
Fields was 2 for me. Yep.
Yeah,
right here.
And really, Lawrence hasn't even looked tremendous so far.
He looked better on Thursday. I got to give him credit. He's actually coming along, and even on prime time, against Burrow in Cincinnati, I feel like that game could have been really daunting for the rookie, and he came out strong and gave the Bengals everything where they needed to take it to the last drive. I mean, that's impressive. He didn't dominate in a sense, but he did everything you want a rookie quarterback to do in a primetime game. I mean, all power to you, man. That was well done. But he's still clearly the number one. But I was with you. I had Fields on a talent level as number 2, and man, he's making me nervous, but I think it's more that offense than Fields.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was going to say. That Nagy, I think, is the problem there. We may not see the full Fields experience until year 2, is what I'm worried about. He hasn't given me a ton of reason for encouragement in his couple starts in the NFL, but I'm still a believer, and I think pre-draft, I had them, post-draft. Well, pre and post, I think I had them the same. I had Lawrence, Fields, Lance, Mac, Zach. And I think that's still basically where I'm at after 4 games, of the season, seeing each of them a little bit. Maybe Mac has closed the gap with Lance a little bit, but just like I said, he's the one I've been kind of most impressed by, even though he hasn't put up big fantasy numbers. He's been a pretty good real life quarterback. He hasn't been turning the ball over too much, which you see a lot of rookie, which Trevor's done, for instance. Would that be your ranking of the 5, or how would you have them ranked at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would probably put Mac over Lance at this point, just because I like that kind of quarterback. I like the game manager stuff more. Nothing against Lance in that regard, but I just don't know if it's really going to pan out, right? Like we just have so many unknowns, and anytime there's a rusher, it's a high ceiling like we talked about, but that floor is terrifying. And Fields, we saw the floor for Fields too. And Wilson has a pretty low floor. I mean, the running game in New York for the Jets is not much. I mean, there's just not a lot of help on that team. So, I mean, in all honesty, I might put Mac ahead of Lance, but you ask me in 2 weeks and I flip it. I mean, I'm not that hardcore on any of it, but I am with you. I do think Wilson's still my last one, but I think I probably had Wilson 3rd or 4th going into the year, just because he was going to get the opportunity. And I didn't think Lance and Fields were going to get it until week 6 to 8, like I said before. So if you'd have told me that both Fields and Lance would have had a game time and played in a game by week 4, I probably would have lowered Wilson a little further, because I'm like, wow, okay, well, that adds to their value. They're producing earlier. But yeah, I mean, I think Wilson's got a lot of work to do. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback. Unfortunately, he definitely has fantasy potential. He's probably like quarterback 20 to 25, something like that for me, like a low end QB2, and you might be able to snag him for a good deal. But almost anyone that's got him at this point, it wants their round pick back. You know what I mean? Like it's not easy to do that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I put out a tweet a while back. I think after the draft, I said I think this group of quarterbacks is gonna, is gonna kind of usher in a new era here with these young guys, all of them at once, and they're all gonna, it's gonna look really good, and we're gonna look in 5 years and wonder, with these quarterbacks and the Jets having the second pick, how do they end up with Zach Wilson? So
yeah,
that's still kind of where I'm at, but. I'm not gonna. It's not quite like my Rojo hate, where I just have him. I'm never gonna give him
blind
a chance.
rage.
Yes, it's not quite that. So I'll, if he can still change my mind, I'm just not there yet. But one other thing, or at least one of the next other thing we want to talk about, which is give me 1 second. Kyle in the chat had a trade that he wanted to mention to us. Kyle Senra, he gave a 2023 first and a 2022 second for David Montgomery. Did that one Sunday morning, week 3. What do you think of that one, Andrew?
And I gotta say, I like that trade. I know a lot of people are all about this 2023 class that's 2 years out, and I mean, my goodness, go get all the 23 first you can get. No, thank you, man. No, thank you. Give me the player. Give me the guy that I know. I like it. I really do. I like David Montgomery a lot. I think the way this offense is shaping up is a little confusing, but I still trust David Montgomery. And I know this may be a weird thought, but I look at the 23 first as about the same value as a 22 second, right? Like in theory, if you have a 22 second and you want out of it, you can probably get a first the next year for that second. There's a year lost to production value. I'm definitely thinking that's 2 seconds for Montgomery in a sense. Sign me up. That's totally a great trade.
And Kyle mentioned in the comments as well, it's a 0.15 PPC too. So that helps Montgomery's value even more, because he's getting all the workload there.
Yeah.
Unlike most running backs around the league. So
it all helps. Yeah.
Yes. And in tiered PPR, where running backs get a full point, and wide receivers and tight ends get even more than that. So he's getting full PPR points on any catches plus a 0.15 PPC. I like that. I'm hesitant to trade my 2023 first. I'm buying into that hype a little more maybe than you, Andrew. But I'll do it in the right deal. And I think that works. Like, I don't quite value it as a 22 second, but I also don't value it the same as I do a 22 first, even though the 22 class is not supposed to be as good. To me, even when people say classes aren't that good, usually most of the first round, at least going into the rookie drafts, look good. Like this year, a lot of people didn't love the class and kept saying how it wasn't very deep, but there's a ton of guys in that first round that I like. So
I think that happens every year. Yeah, I think every first round is value. And I don't really like it when people say the 23 first is worth more than a 22 first. Because I'm like, you're losing a whole year of production. Like, what are you talking about? It's worth more. There's no way that's possible, because more information. You can trade that guy for a 23 first plus in a year. Like, what the heck are we doing here? Not always, right? But I mean, in a first round, picks are usually pretty solid or usually pretty steady. And I don't think that even a good class, I feel like doesn't have bad players after pick 12. You know what I mean? Like, there's still players that are getting opportunity. I feel like this year we had a lot of undrafted free agents in a lot of rookie drafts that I was in, which seemed more than usual, right? You had guys like Javian Hawkins and I don't know, Felipe Franks. I remember drafting him in one league. You know what I mean? Like, all these guys, you're just like, I don't know. I mean, that felt really shallow to me this year. And so if everyone's saying next year is even worse, I don't know if that's true. We'll see when we get there. Like, I can't predict that far ahead. Who knows who comes out? Who knows who stays? Too soon.
Yeah. To me, the whole bad class thing, which a lot of people are saying about 22, that really affects more the rest of the round, second, third, fourth. Like even
Yes.
this year, it fell off after about 205, 206. It was like off a cliff. There
Yeah.
wasn't, and so maybe something like that's going to happen next year. But I guarantee you, people are going to. There's going to be 12 guys people love next year. So
Well, and I would say this, and I know that you agree with this. If you're rebuilding trade for picks, they don't go down in value, right? Even if it's a down class, that pick is still going to accrue value, right? And even when you get to that point, let's say you've got, I don't know, 3 firsts and 4 seconds, but there's only 6 guys in the draft that you like, and they're all going in the first round. Well, guess what? Trade 2 of your seconds and a player for another first. Bam, you got that guy, right? It just gives you more assets to move. It gives you more liquidity. Draft picks are like cash and players are like stocks, right? Cash is always going to be there. You want to put it in your savings account. You want to hold on to it. You want to have it accrue value. That's what picks are doing. So if you're rebuilding, put all that money in something safe. Don't get risky, and let's get it figured out. You know what I mean?
And Kyle, keeps chiming in here. I appreciate it, Kyle. He said, I definitely took Daz Newsome in a rookie draft.
I have him on a couple teams. On my taxi squad, just hoping he finds a home at this point.
Yeah. I took way too much Javian Hawkins. I was buying into because Mike Davis was iffy and I didn't see Cordero Patterson coming and then they didn't. He got cut by them and they got picked up by the Titans and cut by them. So didn't work out well for Javian or me.
It was a weird offseason.
Yeah. And it looks like in this same league again, Kyle. Appreciate the comments. He said he the next week. Just before Montgomery got injured last week, he said, I think this is before week 4, gave David Montgomery 22 first, 23 second, got Nick Chubb and a 2023 third.
I mean, okay, in value, I like the David Montgomery side.
That's what I was just thinking.
Hindsight, that's a terrific trade because you did just dodge the Montgomery injury. And I think, again, if you make this trade right now, it's Chubb by a mile. Because I think if I'm looking at this and Montgomery's out 4 to 5 weeks, we don't know what we're going to get with him. It is point per carry. We were just talking about that tiered PPR and all this. Chubb still catches passes. I definitely think Chubb is a tier or 2 above David Montgomery. But giving up a first to jump that feels like a lot. But again, looking back, hindsight 2020, that's not a bad trade now. I mean, I don't mind sending a first and an injured Montgomery for Chubb. The second and third kind of washed. I mean, they're 2 years out, but yeah, I mean, I like Chubb a lot. I think that's a good move if you can make it.
Yeah, and he put in here the way it ended up working out between the 2 trades. It was basically Nick Chubb for 2 firsts and 2 seconds, which that's a little pricey for me.
It seems a little steep to me too. Yeah. But again, it's 22 and 3. It's not like it's all next year or anything. Like, I don't know. I don't hate it, but it does feel a little rich. But again, looking at the David Montgomery valuation during this time was, yeah, he did just dodge that bullet. That's for sure.
Yeah, Chubb. I love Chubb. I mean, he might be the best pure runner in the league, but just for fantasy, Hunt's capping that upside, so he doesn't. I think that's the thing that sucks too. Is I think Chubb could catch the ball if Hunt wasn't there. I think you'd be seeing Chubb getting 3-4 catches a game, maybe. But but it's not going to happen. And he has games where he's actually great for his team. Like last week, I think he had like 22 carries for 100 yards, which is great. But that only gets you 10 fantasy points. He had no touchdowns. So he just I like Chubb, but he's kind of that low end, lower tier RB1. And I mean, I kind of think Montgomery can finish in that same area. So I like his first trade. I'm not as high on the second trade.
Agreed. I'm not saying I hate it, but yeah, I'm not as high. That's a good way to put it.
Okay. So another, point we wanted to talk about here was Allen Robinson. And on our sheet, our show sheet for tonight, I put Allen Robinson. What the hell? I kind of wish Scott was here as a Bears fan. I really wanted to ask him about this. But I'm just going to let you talk a little bit, Andrew, about what you think about Robinson. Can you start him at this point? Are you buying him at this point because he's so low? Are you selling him as a 20 or holding or what are you doing?
Man, I like the what the hell question because I think that kind of nails it, right? Like, what the hell, Allen Robinson? But no, for me, Allen Robinson is an enigma wrapped in a tornado, right? he's one of those players that I do like. I do think you can hold him. I do think if you have him on your roster, you're not getting any value for him right now. So there's no reason to trade him away. On the other end, though, if you don't have him on a roster, maybe you can catch another manager in your league sleeping or catch him upset with the timing. And maybe you can make a deal where it's something crazy like a Mike Williams for Allen Robinson straight up. Some of those single position trades are a little crazy, but I think there is definitely some panic settling in on the fantasy community, and especially with the way Fields has been just, I don't know, underwhelming, I guess is the word. I'm not loving Allen Robinson. It definitely seems like Fields has been targeting Mooney. It feels like Fields has been just ignoring Robinson, and all this time we thought Robinson was, quarterback agnostic and can play with anybody. But man, I got to be honest, he's making me nervous. I have him in one or two leagues, and every time I look, I'm doing that thing where I cover my eyes and I look through the two fingers just to be like, how bad was it? You know what I mean? When I'm checking scores on Sunday, and I'm just not a huge fan. So I mean, of the player right now, I'm not a huge fan of the production. I am a big fan of the player, and I think it will eventually level off. So again, if you have him on a roster, I think you hold. I don't think he's someone you can sell. I do think he's someone you can buy, but you're going to have to find the right manager, because you don't want to overpay for someone that's risky. So it's really one of those where I don't think this is the kind of player you send an offer for. You kind of send a DM and just go, hey, are you looking to move Robinson? And you see what their response is. If they put an exclamation point like hell yeah, okay, that's my guy. Let me see what we can do. If they're like, no, this is a fluke, I don't trust it, you can be like, that's fair, and move on. Don't waste your time. But I think this is definitely worth a poke. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's kind of where I'm at with him. I'm still starting him in a couple leagues this week. And
he makes me nervous to start, but I don't blame you. I mean, again, at any minute he could go off for 12 catches and 170 yards. You know what I mean? Like, he's got the talent.
I can't see this continuing. I don't know what it is, but I mean, the guy's been quarterback proof for most of his career. He's never had a good quarterback, and he's always a wide receiver one. That's why that's why I put what the hell on the show sheet. I just can't figure out why he can't do. You would think Dalton
players,
or Fields are probably better than most of the quarterbacks he's had in his career.
Yeah, that's the running joke. We've all kind of made it or said it or seen it online, at least, where it's like, this is the best quarterback he's gotten. It's the worst he's performed. I don't get it. What the hell, Allen Robinson?
Yeah, what the hell? Okay. So real quick, we'll get into some a little sort of mini segment here I wanted to do, which was what I called mixed bag players. Guys who've kind of been up and down through the first 4 weeks. In these first few episodes, we've talked about guys who are disappointments like Allen Robinson, and certainly some of these guys will qualify as a little bit of a disappointment, I think, but and guys who have been surprised by. But there's a few guys here that I wrote down that that we talked about that are they've kind of been up and down. So the reason the guy I had to start with, because it's the guy kind of gave me the idea to do this, was TJ Hawkinson, because the last episode we did, 2 weeks ago, I was taking the victory lap. He's going to be elite. He's great. The scoring I'm using here, I'm looking at a Trade Addicts scoring, which is basically for tight ends, it's 1.75 premium. So this will vary in 1.5 leagues, or if you don't have a premium at all, obviously. But he had 26 points or more the first 2 weeks, and then it's fallen off majorly. He had 2 for 10 in week 3, 4 for 42 in week 4. So I'm to me, the way I'm looking at it is, I'm not sure. I expected that he would not have the low of a 2 for 10. That's what I expected, because I'd said he was going to be in that elite tier. So maybe that doesn't happen, but I'm still not giving up hope for it. Guys have down weeks. Travis Kelce in 1.75 had a 9-point week last week. It does happen, and he's played 2 decent defenses in the Ravens and the Bears. Not every team is going to be able to control him that way. And the targets were there in every game except that 2 catch game. He had 8 targets last week, even though he only had 4 catches. So I still think he can jump into that elite tier. And right now, in the 1.75 tight end premium of Trade Addicts, he's still not that far off of Waller. He's only 7.4 points behind Waller on the season, and he's 17 behind Kelsey. So he's probably closer to that tier than he was last year, but he's because of these last two games, he's not necessarily. Can you include him in there? So what do you think? Is this a blip, or is he going to be tight end 3, tight end 4, but still it's going to be Kelsey, Waller, then down here is Hockenson?
I think Hawk is buy Hawkinson. Go out and buy him. I'm telling you, like I'm with you. I think he's still a stud. I think these are some odd weeks. I think the tight end position in general has these. I feel like Darren Waller had one of these last year too. It was like 3 for 35 or something, and it was like, oh my gosh, is the sky falling? And they're like, oh no, we're fine. He's back to normal. I think that the Detroit offense looks a lot like the Las Vegas offense, where their receivers are kind of, who knows what we're getting every week. You got Quintez Cephas and Khalif Raymond, all these players on Detroit, and obviously the talent is better on Las Vegas, but it all funnels through the tight end, and I think Goff is still figuring that out. I think too the week 3 where we went 2 for 10, where Hawk went 2 for 10. The Lions were playing the Ravens, and it was a really close game back and forth. It took that 66 yarder to win it. Like that was a wonky game, so I'm kind of throwing that one out. Last week, Hawk got 8 targets. That's what you're looking for. That's the ideal. Give me 8 targets, and you're fine with that as a tight end. Sure, went 4 for 42. I don't hate that. I mean, I want more, of course, but I'm not going to go out there and say that was a bad week. Yes, it was underwhelming, but that's not something that I'm looking at like, oh, they're moving him out of the game plan, right? The team still wants him to get the ball. I'm fine with that. So yeah, I think he's still somebody I'm considering in that 3 to 5 tight end range, right? And you're right about the first 2 and then a tier break. I don't think it's a massive drop, but it is a drop. So don't expect that it's going to be tight end 1 overall numbers. But in a couple years, we might look back on this and say, man, we were way off. He is tight end 1. I think he's got that kind of potential. Kid's only 24. He's still figuring out the league. So let's not freak out too much. In Dynasty, it's a long game. Buy TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, and maybe I was a year early on he's going to be in the elite tier. But like I said, I still think it's possible. You look at his schedule going forward, there aren't a lot of Ravens and Bears on there. The Vikings this week.
You got the Rams, which could be tough.
Right? Yeah, but he's also got the Bengals, the Eagles.
He does, yep.
The, Steelers are not the defense they once were and have had some injuries. He does have the Bears again, obviously.
Denver
Vikings again. Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot of nice weeks in there, though. So yep. I definitely think we're not going to see a lot more 2 for 10s or anything like that. So, yeah, like you said, I would still buy Hawk at his price. It's probably gone up a little. I still think if he doesn't do it this year, he's eventually going to be in that tight end 1 discussion. We'll see. In terms of value, I think Kyle Pitts is still going to stay there no matter what he does. But in terms of production, I still think we're going to see Hockenson get in there, especially as Kelsey gets older. Next year it'll be 33. Waller will be like 30. So they could start declining. So yeah, I'm still all in on Hawk, but I have been, it has been a little disappointing these last 2 weeks. I think he bounces back this week against the Vikings, and we get another big game, though.
I agree.
Another guy we were going to talk about was Jonathan Taylor. He bounced back this week, the way we wanted to see him do. But after a solid week 1 where I think I'm trying to pull it up here, he had where is Jonathan Taylor? Jonathan Taylor, 17.6 points, then 6.3, 8.2 in PPR scoring. He is a guy I'm a little worried about. The snap shares have been a little
disconcerting,
wonky.
Yeah. He's only getting like 50% of the snap share. That I thought that was going to go up this year. I really did. I thought he was going to be a bell cow getting 80% of the snaps. I don't think anybody expected him to get James Robinson share like getting 85, 90%, but because they have so many there.
That 80% type thing towards the end of last year.
Exactly. And it worked. They were doing well. The team was winning. I thought that's the makeup. That's what we want to do. And yeah, now, I mean, his snap shares, I'm looking at it here. It's 55, 45, 48, 51. Oh, that is not the trending number I'm looking for. That's a plateau right at 50. That makes me nervous. I'm right there with you. I do think he has a potential to be a breakout and to be a bell cow and all that, but he's facing Baltimore on Monday night this week. That makes me a little nervous. Then you got Houston, San Francisco, Tennessee. All three of those are defenses I think he could run on. So I'm nervous about Taylor, but I'm not freaking out, right? Like I'm not panicking, I'm not selling, I'm not like, fire sailing him or anything like that. I do think he's got a lot of potential, but I understand the hesitation.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. I love Jonathan Taylor as a talent, but Hines, steals a lot of that pass mark. You occasionally get one of those games where they happen to throw, 4, 5, 6 passes to Taylor, and he pretty much catches everything thrown at him, which is, like I said, it's a shame Hines is there. It's sort of disappointing because he's a guy that I did really like out of the backfield coming out, and he just landed on the wrong team to kind of take advantage of that part of his game because they have one of the best pass catching backs in the league. So that's a concern. And then again, the usage is a concern. Mack is getting in there some now. They'll love to run Hines sometimes near the goal line. So it's just.
It's a head scratcher, man. Like, I don't know what that team's doing right now. I mean, their quarterback had 2 busted ankles and still played. I mean, who knows what's going on with that team? I don't like it. Let's put it that way. I don't like it.
Yeah, he's RB 19 now. I don't think he finishes that low, but I have a hard time putting him much further than low end RB1 at this point. Just
agreed
for the 2021.
If you can buy him for an RB2 price, go for it, right? Like there are definitely managers out there that are even more freaked out than we are on this, discussion here. It's like there are definitely people out there that are going, "Oh, he's not the bell cow, and I'm 1-3, and it's time to turn it around, and I'll sell him for a first and a Jerry Jeudy or something." You know what I mean? Like maybe you can get some crazy deal done like that. And again, I'm kind of off the top of my head, but I would take the Taylor over a late first and Jeudy any day of the week. So, I mean, again, it depends on how you want to build your team and how you want to go about it. But if you're contending, I think he's still somebody you should target. I think he's got some value.
Oh, I definitely agree. I wonder, though, how many Taylor managers are really selling him at that price, though. I think
you never know. I write an article every week now for Fantasy Pros Dynasty Roster Renovation where I kind of go through some of these generic things. And it's like it's hard to give generic advice because there are so many different leagues. But I talk to people on Twitter. I get DMs from people all the time that are like, "Hey, thanks for the advice. I pulled this kind of trade off." And I'm like, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like you can't give specific advice in a general sense. It doesn't make sense. So I'm just saying use that as a basis, kind of like, or find me a trade that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. It's like use that as a I don't know, as a blueprint. You don't have to take it verbatim, but like just come up with something similar. Every manager is going to have their own biases and they're all going to have their own opinions. Try to exploit that is all I'm saying. If you can find somebody who's low on Taylor, now's the time to strike. But yeah, like if I have Taylor in a couple leagues, I ain't selling him for nothing. Like I'm riding this guy to the ground for the next 5 years is my plan. And it's going to take a lot to get me off of him. So yeah, every league is definitely different.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to go into one more guy here. And then there's one other topic I wanted to bring up, and then we'll move into Find Me and Trade. And that is Nuke, DeAndre Hopkins. He's been a little disappointing this year as well.
Yeah.
Started off with a bang. 26.3 points his first game, then about 15, then 5, then 10.7. Do you think, I know he did get banged up, I think, in week 2, which could have led to the bad week 3 and mediocre week 4. Do you think it's just the injury, or I'm a little worried that they seem to love to spread it around. We've seen Max Williams pop up. Christian Kirk has had good
AJ
games.
Green is blowing
AJ
up. My
Green
goodness. Yeah.
has risen from the dead. Rondale Moore had one good game. So what do you think? You think it's just the injury? I mean, I kind of think that the days, especially given that he's 29, maybe the days of DeAndre Hopkins target monster are gone.
I kind of agree. I think that's really what it comes down to is that they're spreading the ball around so much, especially in the red zone and at the goal line, right? They've got Connor punching things in all over the place. You still got Chase Edmonds. You still got Kyler running things in. They don't need to throw it to Hopkins as much. And obviously they've got all the passing options now. Kirk still coming into his own. Rondale Moore showing up as a rookie. Like you said, AJ Green. I mean, there's so many places to put the ball. They don't need to filter 14 targets to Hopkins like they used to. And I going into the season, I thought he was still going to be a top 5 receiver. I thought he had that potential. I remember I was on a podcast going into last year. So it would have been, a full year and some months from now. And I was on the Astronauts podcast, and I was talking with Jetpack Galileo, and he was like, "This guy's going to be a stud." And I was like, "I don't know. He's on a new team." And I ate all of my crow on that one. Like, he
I was
dominated
totally
last
with
year.
you on that.
Dominated last year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how can he be worse year two? That makes no sense. But yet here we are. And it makes me nervous, but I'm not panicking on that. He also had touchdowns in the first two games. He had 2 in week 1, which really helped his numbers, and 1 in week 2. And he hasn't had any in the last 2 weeks. So that obviously lowers his points. Those are fluky. Those will come back. I'm not too worried there. But he faces the Niners, the Browns, the Texans, the Packers. All of those games, I think they're going to be either walloping and throwing the ball all over the place, because that's just what that team does, or in close battles, maybe if you want to say against the Browns and the Packers, those are going to be good shootouts. So I do think there is a lot of potential for Hopkins to turn it around. I don't think he's someone you can really buy cheap either right now, because anyone who has him, the name value alone is worth 2 firsts. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get him for a deal. But yeah, I don't think it's someone I'm panicking on, and I'm definitely starting with confidence every week.
Yeah, I'd still be starting him, but to your point about those touchdowns, I mean, that really buoyed his value those weeks, like you
For
said.
sure.
And I was just looking at it. It's he's 6 catches, 4 catches, 3 catches, 4 catches. That's not what you want to see from your potential wide receiver one.
No, and 8, 4, 6, 7 in targets. Like, that's
Yeah.
not great either. Like, I want double-digit targets for this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the begin. I mean, his values already started declining. I think after this year, it's going to be his value is going to go in the toilet. He's going to be a 30-year-old wide receiver who's not commanding the targets he did before. Even if he scores a bunch of touchdowns or something this year, sort of like the way Thielen did last year, where he didn't have an amazing year but scored like 14 touchdowns. I yeah, I mean, it might be time to get Allen Hopkins. I have a few shares myself as a guy who doesn't just do the ageist thing that much. I definitely have some Hopkins that I was banking on more than this, and it's probably a good idea to maybe get out now. I think.
Well, I think it's worth shopping. I will say that. I don't want to say like it's time to panic,
Yeah,
but
I'm not saying give him away for
it's
anything.
worth looking. Yeah, it's worth looking. Maybe there's someone who likes him more than you, and he's got a guy that he likes less than you, right? And that's always what we look for, is the valuation difference, the opinion difference. That's what I'm looking for. So yeah, I don't hate that logic. I get what you're saying.
Right. And one quick thing before we move on to the last topic before finding a trade. I did just want to mention, and anyone listening to this in podcast form will certainly already have seen this and known this, but I don't know if you saw, Andrew, Russell Wilson, finger injury, Geno Smith in the game. What do you think of that? What if Russell's out? Geno actually threw a touchdown to DK. It's let Geno cook.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not able to watch it, but right now I had to turn the TV off. We had a storm, and so I was like, no, I'd rather it not be on than be glitchy. But at the same time, I was looking on Twitter just now, and somebody was saying the throw looked pretty good, like he's looking pretty solid. So that could be an interesting twist. I don't know if Geno leans on DK more than Lockett. That might change Lockett's value some, because it looked like Lockett and Russ were cooking as much as they like to do. I mean, up and down a lot, but it's going to be an interesting rest of the game. I mean, they're in the fourth quarter, so I mean, I don't know what to expect yet. Maybe they're just keeping Russ out to get him healthy. But if this is a weeks or a plural weeks thing, I mean, this could be dangerous for the whole team, really.
Yeah, I just saw an alert on my phone, finger injury. I don't know if it's a broken finger or
apparently he had to like pop it back in, and everybody was talking about how they were, showing it too much. That's all I saw. I didn't see the injury, but I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to see that tomorrow.
So yeah, that's interesting. If Russ is out for multiple games, I mean, you got to kind of lower everybody's value on there for a few weeks anyway. Yep. But yeah, so the one thing I did want to, and I kind of skipped over it, and that's my bad, Andrew. I know you wanted to talk about Dalvin Cook, so I just wanted to get into that real quick, because I think I might share some of your concerns, but I'll let you go.
I wrote an article about it last week for Pro Football Network, whereas, should we start or sit Dalvin Cook? And pretty much the logic I took out of that article was, if Dalvin Cook starts, I'm starting him. I can't bench Dalvin Cook if he's playing. If he's not playing, I'm probably starting Alexander Mattison, maybe not as confidently, but if I have him in leagues, I'm probably playing him, especially in leagues where I have him with Cook. But the issue comes in if they both play. If Cook starts, is Mattison worth playing also? And what I came to find out, and this ended up kind of being true because they both stunk, but like they're pretty equivalent, really. Like Madison's not much worse than Cook in terms of a lot of different metrics and things like that. So for me, at least, it was Dalvin Cook has had some injuries. He's not injury prone. I'm not using that term, but any running back, Mixon is exactly in the same mindset, where any running back that takes contact and seeks that out is going to have these kind of issues. And it's like, should we be concerned? Is this something that is the tread wearing thin on these tires? Is it something we should consider selling before it's too late? And I know in Dynasty, we always want to get out before the floor falls, but is Cook one of those players you're willing to ride into the ground like a Julio Jones or something, where it's like, hey, maybe this is the kind of thing where I'm just going to take it and see what I get, or like an Allen Robinson who starts to see a decline. Maybe I don't sell. Maybe I just take it. So I guess I'm asking you maybe more than anyone, like, are we worried about Dalvin Cook? Are you worried about Dalvin Cook? What are you doing with him?
I am not that worried about Dalvin Cook for 2021 with this exception. I'm a little worried that I think it looks like he might play this week. I think they should sit him.
I do too.
I feel a lot more confident if they sit him a game or two, because I'm worried. He's even said that he's going to tough it out. That's what football players do. There's still pain. I think if he keeps playing with it and doesn't have a major re-injury, it could hamper his production. That's the concern for me.
It's a 17-game season, right?
Yes.
Like, why are we rushing him back? I think the Vikings are in an odd spot there. They have not done well this year. They've lost some really close games, and I feel like
could have beat Arizona.
Well, right, and then they couldn't beat the Bengals in week 1. They had to go to overtime and lose in a kick. You know what I mean? Like they've had a rough go of it, and I wonder if that has a hand in it, where they're like, well, we can't afford to bench him. We need to win. And I'm with you though. I'm not a coach. I don't have the experience. I'm not asking for the job. My God, but I'm with you. I would probably bench him. I just feel like let him rest up, let him get healthy, and then we'll be good to go when he comes back.
But like you said too, it's funny because they are a team more than most that could afford to bench him because they have a Madison. I mean, Madison is not a humongous drop off from Dalvin Cook. So yeah, I mean, I'd feel way better if he sits this week, and maybe even if he needs to sits another week, and then I think it's full go. If you can get that injury fully healed up, or as much as you can in season, then I think I feel confident a healthy Cook is going to be fine for this year, and I'm willing to ride that production out. We've talked about this before. I'll take that production, and his value is going to decline next year almost no matter what he does, because he's going to be 26, I think, next year, 27 maybe even next year, I think it is. So, but yeah, I'll take that production. I just think, yeah, I mean, if he plays this week, I actually feel less confident in him going forward, almost no matter what he does, just because I think it's gonna continue to be a problem.
Well, the more, again, if we're talking about how, like, is the tread running thin on the tires, the analogy we always use, then why are we driving the car? You know what I mean? Like, let's just park it. Let's let that tread build up, right? Like, what are we doing here? And I get why the Vikings are doing it. He's their guy. The offense kind of flows through him and all this, but yeah, 1 week is not going to kill you. If you bench him a week, you might get 3 weeks out of him. If you play him half-assed for 4 weeks, is that really worth it? I mean, I don't know. I'm with you though. He'd be good to take a nap. Let's just take a nap. You'll be all right.
Especially this week. I mean, he should be able to beat the Lions with Alexander Madison.
God, you would think, right?
Okay, so let's get to this Find Me a Trade. We've babbled on long enough about other stuff. So this week it was submitted by Joshua Acton at Joshua Acton 90 on Twitter. Appreciate you sending this in, Josh. It's a 12-team PPR super flex. No tight end premium, 4-point passing TDs, -1 for interceptions, only 22-man rosters, plus 4 taxi. Start 10, QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, obviously the super flex and 2 flex. It's also a league where you get 2 decisions, one versus your head-to-head opponent and one versus the medium score. So he's 7-1, second in the league. I think he might be second or third in points. And he says, I feel like I got to sell a team ready to contend and built for the future, but a little weak at the wide receiver position, looking to upgrade that without losing too much youth and be a champ for 2+ years. Like, good luck with that, Josh. I hope you do
tough.
that. But
that's tough.
Yeah. Yep. But I'll let you get into the roster. And then before we get into one of our trades, he actually, I wanted to go over this with you. I don't know if it's still up there, but earlier tonight, I know he had a trade up in that league. I don't know if you have that up on your screen.
I
Okay.
do. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
go into that. But
I
I want to start. Yeah, I want to start with the team because I think it's worth, at least somewhat worth reviewing it in a sense and saying, here's what we got. So I'll share the screen for anyone watching live. I don't know how much of this you can see, but he's got Ryan Tannehill and Justin Herbert as his two starting quarterbacks in the super flex. Running back, he's got Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Ezekiel Elliott. So he's pretty stacked at running back for the starters. Receiver, he's got, well, that funny man, Cordero Patterson at receiver. Corey Davis and T. Higgins. It's a little light. I agree with him. And tight end, Mark Andrews. We look at the bench. We kind of go down again. It's only 22-man rosters. This is a pretty short bench, which I think has a hand in some of this. But he's got Justin Fields as his third quarterback. Then running backs, he's got J.D. McKissick, and that's it. Like literally, that's his only other. He's got 5 running backs on a 22-man roster. After that, you got a bunch of receivers. He's got Calvin Ridley, who's out this week. Obviously, he's got Darnell Mooney. He's got Michael Pittman. He's got Josh Gordon, who could be something. Anthony Schwartz, KJ Osborne, Quez Watkins. So he's got some flyers. I don't mind any of those guys. And then tight end behind Andrews, you've got Gronkowski and Tanyan. And then, of course, John Harris, who I'm not a huge fan of. Jacob Harris, right? Isn't it Jacob? Yep, Jacob Harris.
Yeah.
So again, like he's got some tight ends, and those aren't bad. There's maybe some strength there. On injured reserve, he's got Will Fuller and Tony Jones Jr. And then taxi, he's got Jared Patterson, Kyler Granson, Josh Palmer, and Noah Gray. So he's got a lot of talent. I do like it for a 22-man roster, but all of this running back heavy at the top makes me nervous. It's not something I like to do with my teams. Is really what it comes down to. It's very top heavy, but if you're contending, I don't hate it. Like this may not need a trade. There is a benefit to maybe not doing this trade. Thanks for fixing the screen there. But what I'm looking at with this is like he's got a pretty solid team. He's entirely right. This is a contending team. And do you want to comment on any of that before we talk about the pending trade and then we get into ours? Maybe do you want to do it that way?
Yeah, and I just to comment on what you said, I kind of agree with you. And I looked at this. I don't hate the idea of just sort of standing pat with this roster. I think it's a pretty solid roster. I agree. He is a little light at wide receiver, but I think you can get away with that with a lot of the other talent he has in his team. I definitely think he's a contending team, which when we get into the trades, we'll see that one of us disagrees with that. But
yeah.
But yeah, so the guy mentioned he actually DM'd me earlier tonight and mentioned that he had a trade in there, and I said, keep it up there before you accept. We'll talk about it on the show and see what we think. So the trade he has that's which I'm not sure we've ever done on the show before, an open trade in somebody's
I don't think
league.
we have.
Yeah. He has an offer from a team that he says looking to start a rebuild of DeAndre Hopkins, who we were just talking about, and Myles Gaskin for CEH, a 2023 first and a 2022 third. To me, this is an easy reject.
Really?
I don't know what you think. Yeah.
I don't think it's an easy reject. I think it's a reject. I would probably ask for a little more or try to get somebody better than Gaskin back. That's probably what my thought was going to be. I don't mind Gaskin. I think he's probably going to blow up this week because he was bad last week. But he's not a good dynasty asset. I just don't see him long for that team. Clyde is going to be a little bit longer term asset. And the first, obviously that hurts. So my thought was either going to be, I would reject this trade as it is, but if it's the best you can do, then it's the best you can do, right? Maybe this is where you go back in a couple trades and you go, fine, I'll go with the original. But I was going to say, instead of the 23 first, maybe offer a 22 second and a 22 third with Clyde. Right. Take that first to a second this year instead of a first in 2 years. Then you're giving a second and a third and Clyde. I think that's a little more even given the fluctuation of Gaskin and the fluctuation of Hopkins. I would probably do that. But that 23 first, he doesn't similar value to me, but that first has more cachet to it. I think you can get more for that.
Yeah, I do believe he doesn't have a 22 second, though, which would be a problem there.
Well, I thought he did, actually. I thought I looked at this. No, you're right. He doesn't. He has a 22 third. So then maybe you do a 23 second and a 23 third. You had another one in there or something, right? But what I'm getting at is I think we're on the same page. It's a little bit much. I don't think it's an easy reject, though. That was where I was like, oh, really? You would smash reject on this?
It's worth thinking about. Because to me, Myles Gaskin has almost no value. No one expects him, including me, to have 2022 value. And last week scared the hell out of me.
You're not alone. Yeah.
He had 0.3 points last week. So I don't even know if he has 2021 value. Malcolm Brown got significantly more snaps last week. I don't know what's going on there. So like, literally, he has like next to zero value for me in this trade. So it's basically DeAndre Hopkins to me for
for Clyde.
CEH. Yeah, and a first, even if it's 2023, it's still a first, and the third is whatever. But so I think I would rather have CEH in the first, because of some of my concerns about Hopkins too that we just talked about. So even though he could use the receiver help, I wouldn't want to pay that much for it. So
I agree.
yeah,
I don't think Clyde and Hopkins are that far off, is really what it comes down
right,
to. Yeah, the Hopkins is definitely worth more, but I don't think he's a whole first more than Clyde right now. Just
right.
because he's declining and Clyde is probably still ascending, albeit he cratered and is coming back. But yeah, I think that first makes it a deal breaker for me. Not so much the Gaskin side, but I would try to move that first down to something else. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you send one of your receivers, right? We just looked at his receivers on the bench. Maybe he sends like a Pittman or a Mooney, one of those guys instead of the picks, right? And makes it 2 for 2. I don't think that's terrible, right? Where you
Yeah,
send like Clyde and Pittman for Hopkins and Gaskin. I don't mind that, right? Like
yeah.
that's a little better. Get rid of the picks and player only. I mean, there's some options there that might sound better to me.
Or I'd be fine. I don't have the other team's roster in front of me, but if he could get something more significant than Gaskin, then maybe I'd be fine with Clyde in the first. And it doesn't have to be some kind of obviously superstar player, but to me, like I said, Gaskin is almost at zero for me now after what happened last, and really this whole season. I mean, even before last week, it's not like Gaskin was lighting it up. So
yeah.
So I would need a more significant piece to part with Clyde in the first. So
I get that.
And so I guess we'll get into the trades here. I know Scott did give us one. You wanna give the people that, Andrew?
Sure, I'll run through. I mean, it's similar to mine, so I think maybe it's a good segue into mine anyway. But Scott's trade was to send Zeke to a team named Mauricio HL. I think I'm saying that right. Mauricio HL for Jerry Jeudy in a second. And this is kind of what I was saying before. We're like, maybe you can trade for Jeudy in a first in some places because Judy's not getting any points. Some people he still has trade value, but his production value is a little bit low right now. So Scott said this, and then he put on there too. He doesn't know what he's doing with his roster. It's old and super young, and I'm guessing he's talking about that Mauricio. The other,
it just I was pulling it up. It's very it is kind of weird. He has like Matt Ryan, Emmanuel Sanders, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Latavius Murray, T.Y. Hilton, but he also has Judy, Rondale Moore, DJ Moore, Michael Carter, Trey Sermon. So yeah, he's all over the place.
But again, I mean that sometimes you have those teams that don't know what they're up to, and maybe this trade forces them down a path, right? Where they look at this and they go, "Hey, now I'm contending," even if they really aren't. But the only thing I don't like about this trade is that I think it makes this team, Josh's team, significantly weaker now. And he's contending. He's 7-1. I'm just not sure that's enough for me. I like the value of it. But I want a little bit more production value because if I'm contending, that's kind of what I'm looking for is kind of pivoting in a way. And so I'll kind of use that maybe as a quick segue into mine. Mine was in a similar vein though.
Well, real quick, to that point with the Scott's trade, I know he thought this team wasn't good enough to contend.
Right.
I think he mentioned because of his quarterbacks.
Yeah, and he's because it's specifically Tannehill. He's not exactly sold on. I don't mind Tannehill as a QB2 though. I think Tannehill is a fine QB2 in a superflex. I think you can contend with this roster for sure. I just think that the worry part is Patterson, who knows what he's going to be long term. Ridley's out, so maybe that's kind of where there's a gap in the starting lineup right now. But Corey Davis is not bad as a wide receiver 3. Higgins is a great wide receiver 2. I mean, there's some talent here, and I think he's really close. So again, Scott's trade was Zeke for Jeudy in a second. He then offers and I'll finish this, I guess. He said maybe doing CEH for Jeudy in a first. I don't mind that, right? But again, you're losing production value. You're gaining trade value. You're gaining more assets. And he doesn't have a first or second next year. So that's not bad. But if I'm contending, I don't mind not having picks. I can get those after the season. You know what I mean? Like, I'll pay a premium later to get him, to give me the title. But my trade, again, in a similar vein, was to send Zeke and Gronk to a quarantine, which I think is a terrific name for a team. Especially in this league, which is COVID Dynasty.
COVID Dynasty, yeah.
But so you send Zeke and Gronk for Godwin or McLaurin, whichever one the other guy likes less, and Damian Williams. And the idea there is you still get production value out of Damian Williams. Quarantine isn't as much of a contender from what I recall. Their running backs are decimated. They've got nobody left at running back. So it adds Zeke, obviously, and Gronk, who's kind of a win now, but you can still trade to someone else. Or I would even say McLaurin and Williams is the two I would target. But if he's really high on McLaurin, maybe you pivot to Godwin, maybe you add another piece in there. But I just think you need one more receiver here because it is 3 receiver start. You've got 2 running back, 3 receiver. It is a PPR. I mean, there are things in here that make sense that I would want more receivers than running backs in this kind of league myself. And he's got 4 stud running backs and what I would say is 2.5 receivers with Ridley. I mean, I'd need to flip that. I would rather have 4 receivers and 2.5 running backs. So that's kind of why I'm putting the value, the big chip from Zeke to McLaurin or Godwin, I guess. So what do you think about that trade?
Yeah, well, I agree with you on the receiver point too, especially with your starting 3, and you can flex even more than that.
Yeah, you flex 2 of them, so you can start 5 receivers.
Yeah, I think the value is pretty good, and I don't mind getting. I don't mind. I do think you should probably be trading a running back here because he's got pretty nice depth at running back. So
very nice, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's like 4 or 5 deep at running back, and they're all very good running backs right now. So. And I would love if he could pull McLaurin because I love that guy. He's just he's quarterback proof. He's just people he wasn't highly regarded coming out, but he's just proven it every step along the way. I love watching McLaurin play. But
agreed.
But and Damian Williams is a nice little added piece to get in there. That you can use for the next month or so if you need to in your flex spot. I guess my only concern would be if the guy would accept it. I don't know what he's thinking right now of his team. He's with the against the median, double decisions there. He's 2-6, but he's only 2 games out of a playoff spot. So I mean, maybe he's trying to, because will he take Zeke? Like you said, his RBs are not very good, but looking at it, he has like nobody. Like it looks like he wasn't even trying to get running back. Like he has James Conner, Damian Williams, Tevin Coleman, Darrell Williams, Alexander Mattis. I mean, maybe this is a 0 RB guy.
It's a 0 RB build.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where a 0 RB build can pay off, but this doesn't show that. But like his receivers are stacked. He's got AJ Brown, Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin, Jamar Chase, and Chris Godwin. Like this is more the team that I would usually build. Not the 0 RB per se. I would usually have 1 or 2, but he's got 5 stud receivers. That's why I think it's a perfect trade partner. His tight end, he's got Kyle Pitts. That's stud. Quarterbacks, he's got Burrow and Wilson. That's not bad. I mean, this guy should be contending. And if I'm that team, if I look at that roster and I go, really what I'm missing is a stud running back to fill that hole every week that I don't have to worry about it. And I'm losing Williams. Okay, fine. He's a short-term guy anyway. But you add Zeke to this roster and you add Gronk as a flex. I don't think this team's that bad at all. I really think this team is a chance to turn it around a little. And that's kind of why I thought it would be a good partner. I also mentioned in my write-up that if you want to try to go for Jamar Chase instead, maybe you do something like CEH and Higgins for Chase and Connor. I don't know. Like try to go big with it. And I don't know if I want both Chase and Higgins, but Chase is, in my opinion, Chase is the best asset on that team. But he's got Burrow and Chase. That's a stack. He probably wouldn't want to switch that unless you give him Higgins. I mean, there's some gameplay that you can try to get into there, but that's the team I think of all of them that I would look at and say, that's the team I need to trade with because they need what I have and I need what they have.
Yeah, and like I said, I like it a lot. As long as it's just a matter of this guy. Does this guy want Zeke? That would be the only concern I have with it.
And that's what you could pivot to CEH, like Scott was saying. Like there, you can maybe even pivot to Eckler if you wanted. I mean, that's not the only thing.
If he decides he's not in it this year, CEH I think is still an attractive guy to go for, even in a rebuild, because he's locked into Kansas City essentially for 5 years because they have the as a first round pick. They have the 5th-year option. So, So I'll get into mine and then we'll finally finish up here. Thank you to everybody listening in podcast form or watching right now. We do have a few people still watching bearing with us. There's only 2 of us. Of course, in my head, I thought, oh, well, maybe we won't go that long tonight. And now we're over an hour and a half. So
I missed you, Rock. We have a lot to talk about.
I guess so. But I'll get into my trade and then we can finally finish up. So usually I can tend to kind of go for the bigger ones, but I actually went with a little bit of more of a smaller trade this week. And it's actually at least one guy we talked about earlier, which is Cordero. He has Cordero on his team. And I have him trading Cordero and either Tanyan or Gronk, whoever the guy likes better. Obviously, if he was playing, he'd probably prefer Gronk, but because of the injury, I wasn't sure, which one would work. To team Brandon Kiger, hopefully, if you're listening, Brandon, hopefully I didn't butcher your name. Um, for Tyler Lockett. This would have worked better if they were not playing tonight, because now he can't make this trade until next week. But I still wanted to include it in here, for just for some sort of macro reasons to get into the idea of the trade. One of which actually would be timing, which if he was playing Sunday, timing would be better. But I like the idea of selling Cordero coming off the last couple games. Tyler Lockett had not had a great last couple games. I'm not sure what he's doing. He's 5 for 57 tonight, so he doesn't actually lit it up. But I like the idea that, maybe this guy's not, seeing, he's seeing Lockett not doing great the last couple of games, and
also
Patterson
this guy's got
has
both Lockett and Metcalf,
right? And that was one of the things I was going to point out
that's
too.
Different, and then the Josh's team has Wilson, so it would add a stack. I love this trade. I think this is actually something you could pull off even after this week. I don't think that. I mean, again, I don't think Cordero is going to do 0 this week, and either Tanyan or Gronk. I mean, their value for the year is still pretty much the same. I mean, again, just looking at the overall, I mean, the guy's tight end is Higbee, who obviously scored a touchdown tonight. He's been a little hurt, but he's not a dominant player. After that, he's got Everett and Hooper. He definitely could use a tight end. So yeah, I think your trade's right on the mark here. I think there is definitely some hatred in a way for Lockett, who at this point in this league has only scored 10.7, which again, not terrible, but Metcalf scored 26. Right. So like Lockett is not the guy tonight. So maybe he gets out of it. It's possible.
So it probably still works, even like you said, because I think we both expect Patterson to have at worst a decent week with no Ridley going against the Jets. And he is trading. This actually is Josh is the second place team. This is the first place team. But if you're going to move Cordero Patterson, you have to move him to a contending team. So I'm not worried about that. That's another thing I wanted to point out. I don't worry about who I'm trading someone to. Am I going to make this team better? I just worry about making my team better. So,
right.
That's one thing I wanted to point out here in terms of this trade. And I just the other team. He basically only has 4 running backs, one of which is Mostert, who's out for the year. And he has McCaffrey, who's banged up, Josh Jacobs, who was banged up. So it's not that he's desperate for a running back, but he could certainly use one. You mentioned his tight ends are kind of a mix of those guys you hope do well every week. And Tanyan is not necessarily better than that, but at least you have another extra guy to throw in there. And like you said, that's what I was thinking too. If I own Metcalf and Lockett, I'm looking to split them up. I had Chase and Higgins in the league, and I just made a trade today to trade Higgins because I don't like having 2 receivers from the same team.
You steal from one for the other.
Exactly.
I don't mind having like a running back and a receiver. Yeah, but like 2 receivers, you're too heavy on that team.
Yeah,
so, it's not DFS, guys. Come on.
His wide receivers aren't super deep, but he does have Visca, who again the timing kind of works out well in that regard too. That Visca had a nice game last week. He's kind of a hot name right now a little bit because of the Chark injury. So I think it works in a lot of ways, and it still maintains. He wanted to say he didn't want to lose his youth. I didn't gain him any youth, but I traded an old 2 old guys, no matter which tight end it is, for another old guy. So you're not gaining youth, but you're not losing any of your youth either. You're still holding on to all those young guys. So that's where I was going with that. Any other thoughts on that before we close out here?
No, I think we're all on the same page. We're all trying to say, you definitely need some wide receiver help. I think that's the first thing I would do here is look at those teams that we mentioned, even that have wide receiver depth, and see what you can finagle. I do think too, the way that tonight's game went wasn't great for Lockett. Maybe that helps your case. Maybe you can go get him for a little cheaper. I know in Sleeper, in some leagues, you can trade for players after they've played. And I did this last week where Chase played on Thursday and then I traded for him on Saturday. He wasn't able to be in my lineup, but the guys that I traded away were not allowed to be in my lineup either, which was confusing. So that caused me to have a loss, which I was not expecting. But hey, you got my guy, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah,
the long game. But at the same time, I mean, I might wait till see how Cordero does. if he blows up again, maybe you can get more. Maybe you can do a straight up Cordero for Lockett, even in Dynasty. You never know. Lockett is so hit or miss. There are people out there that are just out on him. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, maybe you can, and yeah, and I didn't mind losing the tight end because
yeah,
I guess he does have Tunyon and Gronk, and neither one of those is his primary tight end, which is Mark Andrews. So,
yep.
so I didn't mind adding it in there. But if you could do Cordero for Lockett, I'm all about that. So, um, okay, so I guess we'll finish up here. With some of our regular business at the end here. One thing I did want to say is we don't do this often enough. Find me a trade. We depend on your submissions to do it. So if you want to send it in, can send it to the Twitter handles, mine, Andrews, the pod, which I guess I'll give now. I'm at Dynasty FF Addict. Andrews at Andrew Hall FF. The pod is at Dynasty Junkies. And also Scott, who's not here, is at Scott_Sidlow. Also, make sure you're following the DAP Network on Twitter at DAP_Network. You can you'll see the live streams for us and for Fantasy Timeline, and follow on YouTube. You can get them. You can see both shows there as well. Please give us a subscribe, rate, and review, preferably a 5-star review, but just a review. Let us know what you think of the show. Anything we can improve, we're happy to hear about it. And make sure you're doing the same with the DAP Network as well, because there's a bunch of great shows there. Us, Timeline, Trade Addicts, of course, Get Real with Casey Kasem, and the newest one, the Fantasy Narrative with Brian Haar and Dustin Church is another good one. So make sure you're doing all that. And then I just wanted to finish up. This is our first show in 2 weeks, and I know this happened a little while ago, but I felt we should mention it. Which was Mike Tagliere. Everybody knows, COVID. He passed away, very sad. And Andrew, works for Fantasy Pros. So he's probably even more so than me. Maybe, I don't know if you've had contact with Mike or not, but I have not. But I mean, he was one of the first fantasy guys, I really, got into, would read his articles. The primer was amazing. He's just an influence on everybody almost in this industry. One of the hardest workers out there from everything you hear. One of the nicest, you could just kind of almost tell from just listening to him, one of the nicest guys out there. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, even though it's been about 2 weeks now since he passed away, our hearts go out to him and his family. And Andrew, anything you want to say before we finish up here?
I mean, I was shocked when I heard, right? I mean, we were all kind of figuring he would pull through and make it out of that and everything, and it sucked. You know what I mean? Like, that was just a brutal Saturday. I think that all of us kind of took one on the chin. And I know last week was tough for a lot of reasons for a lot of people, and I just didn't have the energy. You know what I mean? It just kind of sucked the wind out of me for all of week 4. It was pretty brutal. Took some time off Twitter a little bit there and kind of just, put my priorities in order. But I'm right there with you. I think Tags was the inspiration for me writing. In all honesty, like, I'd written some other things here and there, but never really dipped into fantasy. But after listening to him on the Fantasy Pros podcast for years and following his work, I interacted with him a little bit on Twitter here and there, but never really had him on a podcast. Never really got to talk to him much. Was really looking forward to talking to him at the convention, the expo. And I know he decided not to go. He got COVID right before that. So it's just a shame. I mean, he was just such a great guy, and there's nothing but good things that were said about him. So, I mean, yeah, we'll miss him. And obviously we'll try to keep going in his honor in a way, and just make sure that we all put forth the best effort we can. Cause that primer was like a novel every week. I mean, that thing was nuts. And I'll be honest, like, I've never seen anything like that. And I didn't read it every week near the end of this season. I haven't had time, but I know that was the place I would start on Tuesday or Wednesday. I would go and just open that thing up on my window, and between things at work, I would read a couple blurbs and move on and read and come back. And it would take me the whole week to read it, but it was part of my week. And I just, man, I tell you what, that hit me like a lead balloon, man. And I can't wait to read his book. I really do hope that his book, whatever he was writing, gets published or released in some form, because that guy had a way with words, man. And I'm hoping we can do him proud. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, totally agree. And I just also wanted to mention, it's amazing what this fantasy football community did in terms of that GoFundMe. I think it got up to like I haven't checked it in a while, but I know it got up to like close to, if not over, $400,000. So amazing that everybody contributed to that. It just shows how loved he was in this community. And I think we normally end with a Junkies out, but I think in honor of tags, we'll just end with a little moment of silence here. I don't even think I'm going to tag the outro at the end of the edit. We'll just do a moment of silence for tags, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.